Hi. Hi, hi.
Hello, hello,
Bringing it yeah. Hi. Hi, Emily.
hello.
Okay,
How
so
you
I'm going to
doing
go ahead
today?
and set this up to 40 minutes just because we know. There. Ta-da. So how are you doing?
Hmm, Feeling okay. I spent the yesterday most of the day asleep. It was weird.
Sounds like you
Yeah,
needed it.
I did, obviously. Yeah, I didn't think I did, but I had been really tired. I've been, really very active. And then on the Wednesday, so yesterday was Thursday, on Wednesday, I had what do you call it in the US? I did supply teaching. Is that what you call it?
Oh,
You
substitute teaching?
substitute teaching, yes. And we ended up going bowling with 6 kids. And so it was like the most fun day of doing substitute teaching. But I pulled all these muscles that haven't been in years.
Oh, no.
And I think my body was just saying, you know what, you just need a rest, girl. And so yesterday I had breakfast and then I thought, oh, I'll just soak my feet. Felt like soaking my feet. Um, and I fell asleep doing that. And then I
My
thought, oh,
gosh.
the water got cold, so I I took my feet out and just lay on the couch, and that was it until about 4 o'clock. From Yeah, it was
That
crazy.
sounds amazing, though.
It
That's
was.
that's a self-care
I
day.
obviously needed it. I needed it. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, sorry, I'm still having breakfast.
Ah, you're good. You're good. It's been kind of a wild day over here.
And you?
So, I was recorded previously for a summit that's been going on all week this week as one of the guest speakers. And today was the day that my interview was going live. So, part of my job as a summit speaker was to be present for this because if people had questions
Mhm.
during or after the airing of my episode, they were going to be putting those on Facebook. So, I was all over there and answering questions and stuff. And then we had an hour long live session that was live streamed to that Facebook page. So I had to be there for that as well. And I got a lot of really tough questions.
Mm.
One of them was really hard to answer. And it's, it was a Christian based group. So it's all about how God shows up in your life and that kind of stuff. And this lady was telling me about how, as soon as I said the words Denver, she felt a shiver up and down her spine because that's where her son went when he developed his drug addiction. And he was found deceased in a hotel room last year here in Denver. And she was asking, after everything you've been through, you've been able to move beyond it, but how do I move beyond the pain that I'm going through?
Wow.
And my
Wow.
answer wasn't even faith based. It was, well, for one, you have to understand that what happened is not your fault unless you gave him the drugs that he used. It's not your fault. And number two, you have to forgive yourself because I know exactly what you're going through. I know exactly. I mean, I lost my son. He's not deceased, but he's
Mm.
he's not in my life. And you have to understand that you can only control yourself. You can only control your own responses to things. You cannot control your son. And the reason he went to Denver is the same reason he could have gone to Vancouver, Washington, or anywhere else in the world. It's because
Yeah.
he didn't want to be around you because he didn't want you to see him suffering.
Yeah.
It
Wow.
has nothing to do with who you are. Forgive yourself first. Take a couple of deep breaths, have a lot of grace and a lot of understanding for yourself. Because it sounds like as much as you love him, as much as you're speaking about this, you are in pain over it. You're not even angry at him. So that anger's got to be going somewhere. So that one was hard.
That's intense. Yeah. You put yourself out there and you have to find that within you straight away, don't you? Like it's just
Yep, absolutely.
wow.
And it's hard. So
Yeah.
one of the other things that I'm doing right now is I'm working very hard on putting together my public speaking pitch because I'm
Mm-hmm.
hitting that really hard. I'm going to be reaching out to pretty much every company here in the state of Colorado that has more than 50 employees and asking them, hey, can I come and speak to your employees? This is what I got. So that'll be fun.
Mm.
But
Mm.
Kyle hasn't found a position yet. So it's it's kind of important that we start getting some kind of income.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my focus right now is I know I've got it in me. I know I can do this. I've been putting this off for a while and it's time to hit it hard. So I got it. I know I got it, but I don't want to.
Mm. I hear you.
Yeah. And,
Mm.
I love doing the public speaking thing. I hate the sales thing. I hate
Yeah.
having to pitch. This is who I am. This is what I do. Won't you hire me? Because
Mm.
ain't nobody hiring me right now but me. Uh, so I'm working on putting together this whole introduction letter. And, they say the first paragraph has to be or should be a personalized paragraph about the person, uh, preferably the person or their business if you don't have any information about the person. So look them up on LinkedIn, see if you have any mutual connections on LinkedIn, and use that to your advantage. But you also have to get straight to the point very quickly. So it's probably only going to be like a one sentence thing to
Mm.
be able to really make that connection. I
Yeah.
have to do
Well,
that for all of them.
it's
And then
like 30 seconds. The first 30 seconds of meeting someone is when you make an impression. So, yeah,
right,
first sentence.
right. And
Mm.
people get a lot of emails. They don't necessarily want a bunch of emails, but they get a lot of emails. Yeah.
Mm.
And you're going to have to give them a reason to read yours the whole way through.
Mm.
So if I
Mhm.
use a personal connection, that's more likely going to happen. If I
Mm.
don't use a personal connection, then I have to just talk about them, make them feel good about them, make them know that I've done my research and I know who they are.
Mm.
But then I go
Mm.
straight into I'm a survivor of human trafficking and sport torture, and now I've risen above my past to become a public speaker and a published author. I'd love the opportunity to speak to your company or organization or employees, whatever fits, about overcoming obstacles, letting go of resentment, and learning how to approach difficult conversations that need to happen before it's too late. That's something I've been working into my podcast interviews lately. I'm
Mm.
hoping you might also be familiar with any other companies or organizations that might benefit from my specific skill set and life experience. Please get back to me if you can see there being an opportunity for us to work together. Thank you so much. Super short. Hopefully that does it.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And I'm really glad I have a local phone number, a little Google Voice number, so that it doesn't look like I'm writing to them from out of the area. I've already put my
Mm.
contract together. So I've got a speaking agreement that's a 1-page document.
Oh,
And it talks
great.
about, if they cancel within 7 days, the client pays the speaker a cancellation fee of 10%. If the client cancels within 24 hours of the event, the client owes a 30% cancellation fee. If the speaker cancels the agreement, the speaker will refund every penny, all that stuff. So I've got like this. I'm getting it together.
Good on you. That's great.
Pushing myself. It feels weird.
It's hard, isn't it? Mm.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just I'm just still in a space where I don't need to launch myself out there too much. I need I need where I'm at right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. Um uh, so yeah, we're all at different stages and we all just have to be kind to ourselves. And I'm just looking
Yeah.
at the clock. I'm just going to get my sheets of paper.
Okay.
I've got a
Yeah,
problem
there's
with my
nothing
feet.
quite like having financial stuff happening to kind of shove me out of my comfort zone here. I've been
Yeah.
needing to do this and meaning to do this for the longest time, and I'm finally doing it. So
Yeah.
took me long enough to get there.
Okay. So little Charlie's here on my lap.
And Charlie got a haircut.
Pardon?
Charlie got a haircut.
No, no, he's had it for a while. I
Oh,
need to give him another haircut.
no, he's so cute.
He is. Okay, so I quite enjoyed doing the intros. I'm happy to keep going unless you want to do the intros.
Oh no, you go for it. I'm good with that.
Okay. So panic disorder. Hi again, Amanda. Great to be with you again. And on today's episode, we're going to be discussing panic disorder. So last time we met, you mentioned a couple of different types of panic disorder. So why don't we start off with that?
Sure, absolutely. So last time I'd mentioned that there's generalized anxiety disorder, there's obsessive compulsive disorder, but there's also phobias, social anxiety disorder, and of course, what you and I both have, post traumatic stress disorder. And each of these things can have different subsettings under them, such as we both have complex post traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD. And this is same thing with social anxiety disorder. So you can have different subsections of each of these different things. And it's just been fascinating learning about all of this stuff and figuring out what panic disorders really are and where they come from.
Mm, indeed. I've I've actually been diagnosed with both generalized anxiety disorder and, as you said, CPTSD. And, the labels that the psychiatrist gave me just went in one ear and out the other. But as I've become more, as I've gone down the road of recovery and on that wellness journey, sort of really identifying what the differences are. So why don't we start off, tell us a little bit about PTSD or CPTSD and how that's related to trauma.
Well, PTSD really wasn't even a medical term until the 1980s. And that was something I think we talked about in the first couple of episodes
We did,
was
yeah.
about what PTSD is, what it looks like, how it functions in the brain. But trauma related panic disorders, basically of any type, it's a panic disorder that's caused by a traumatic event. So, post traumatic stress disorder is one of those. We think of PTSD as being the all encompassing trauma energy. That's not it at all. It can come out in so many other ways, also. Um, PTSD, it can cause things like flashbacks, nightmares. You can go into an avoidance system where you're avoiding any kind of reminders of the trauma. And all of this stuff really leads you down a path of having kind of a dangerous direction if you're allowing this to spiral out of control. Pretty much everything that we've talked about on this show so far is directly related to or can eventually cause PTSD in some way. So it's kind of a blanket, if you will. Used to be called shell shock back in the 1940s. Um, this is one of those things that kind of covers a lot of this stuff that we're dealing with. Hypervigilance is a part of PTSD. Eating disorders, heart palpitations, these are PTSD related. They can also be related to other things as well, such as social anxiety disorder. The social anxiety disorder is going to be more um, covering things like avoiding situations, avoiding people, not being comfortable in a crowd. That's something that I deal with. PTSD covers all of this and then a little bit more sometimes, but it can be different based on every single individual.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point to raise is that everyone experiences it differently and has different ways that it's exhibited. So, when you're feeling certain things, when you are experiencing things like chest pain or dizziness, numbness of the hands and feet, rapid breathing, sweating, trembling, weaknesses. Those are some of the symptoms that you can experience through panic disorder, but it may not necessarily be across all of the different panic disorders. So, and I think we mentioned this last time we met, that sometimes you can mistake that for a physical medical problem, when in fact it's actually an emotional, psychological situation that we need to be dealing with. So let's talk about a little bit about the effects of that. So how does it actually affect your daily life if you're experiencing some sort of panic disorder?
So panic disorders can really affect you in a lot of different ways. If you have something like obsessive compulsive disorder, which is one of the panic disorders, it can really affect you in ways like you become so obsessed with numbers or with cleanliness. I have had friends that have had OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, to the point where they would wash their hands so often that their fingers would crack and bleed. My mother did this when I was younger, and she always blamed it on how often she washed her hands while she was cooking. That's not it at all. She
Mm.
had OCD, and it absolutely a panic disorder. This was not something that was unrelated in any way. And she wouldn't talk about or deal with whatever the trauma was. So I don't know what truly caused it in her,
Mm.
but this is a major problem. It caused her hands to crack and bleed and caused a lot of pain for her. She wasn't a germophobic, which there's phobias. Um, that's what a lot of people automatically think comes from obsessive compulsive disorder. And sometimes one can trigger the other, but they don't necessarily have to coexist.
Mm.
Phobias can cause you to completely avoid a lot of stuff. When I was in Paris, I could not go to the top of the Eiffel Tower because one of my phobias is slow moving heights. And I knew from research that if you're at the top of the Eiffel Tower, you can feel the tower sway slightly while
Mm.
you're up there. I couldn't do it. I already knew that I couldn't do it. So I completely avoided it. And to this day, I regret that. But I also know that if I ever get a chance to go back to Paris, I'm still going to avoid it. Um, you can probably speak a little bit more to the generalized anxiety disorder because this is something that you've had to deal with, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose just taking it back for a minute, um, really what we're talking about in terms of the impacts of panic disorder is that it's a really serious disruption to your daily living,
Right.
and your ability to cope with normal and everyday situations. Um, it can trigger feelings of intense panic and anxiety, and sometimes you don't know where that anxiety and panic is coming from, which is what happened to me. I think I might have mentioned in a previous episode that I recall one time, I had a period of time where I was going to bed at night with gas firelighters because I had this intense fear. I had no idea what the intense fear was. Like there was no imminent danger, physical danger in my life. But in my head, something had sparked and I was just fearful to the extreme where I didn't feel safe at night going to bed.
Mm.
So that is a sort of thing that happens with generalized anxiety disorder, in that you're just highly anxious and you're panicky all of the time, and there's no real obvious sign or trigger that has influenced the way you're feeling. But when you look back on it and look at the behaviours and how they came out, your experience, was clearly related to trauma. But at the time, it's hard to make that link between a trauma and what is going on for you at that particular time. So something had happened in my life that made me feel unsafe, but it wasn't a physical unsafe. It was an emotional and psychological unsafe, but it generalized into that feeling of everything is unsafe and I'm physically at danger and I need to protect myself. So it's pretty scary stuff, really, when you're living through it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, when I put together the list of all the different things that we're going to be talking about on all these episodes, I specifically put heart palpitations before this one
Mm,
because I wanted people to, and specifically us, to understand what the heart palpitations were and how scary that can be before
mm,
getting into panic disorders. Because one of the key physical symptoms of panic disorders is a racing heart. You
yes.
can also experience shortness of breath and chest pain. I mean, this is the kind of stuff to where if you don't know that this is a key symptom of panic disorder, you don't know that heart palpitations are a problem, you can easily mistake it for a heart attack.
Mm,
And
mm,
that's just so scary. I mean, we talked about, different times that we've experienced that kind of stuff, but it does cover other things as well. It covers when you're afraid to go to sleep at night. It can cover things like my mom washing her hands so often that they cracked and bled. Panic
mm,
disorders can cover a lot of stuff. Probably the scariest one is the heart palpitations, at least for
mm,
me,
mm,
because you don't know, you have no idea what's going on. And when you start experiencing those heart palpitations as a symptom of a panic disorder, your heart is racing so hard that your brain is telling you there is something very wrong right now. Even if there's
exactly.
not, your brain is saying there's something wrong. You are in danger. And it triggers the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And if you live your life in fight or flight, you're going to have all kinds of problems down the road. One
Mm,
of them is the quite often not diagnosed adrenal fatigue.
exactly.
You've got all this adrenaline coursing through your body
Mm,
because your heart is racing, your brain is saying you're in danger, and you need to run away. You need to hide. You have to be alert. You've got this hypervigilance that is just kicking your butt all of a sudden. These are all so related. Everything we talk about on this show is related. But
indeed.
the heart palpitations are probably the worst part for me for panic disorders.
Yeah, yeah. And it was interesting that you brought up the adrenal fatigue because that's what I'm experiencing at the moment. And there are so many other autoimmune disorders that are outcomes or consequences of having experienced these psychological and emotional conditions. Fibromyalgia is one. Um,
Crohn's
I
disease.
also yeah, exactly. Yeah. I live with psoriatic arthritis again, which is an autoimmune disorder.
Yeah.
And anytime there's any stress in my body, my joints automatically flare up and, uh, you know, um, around each joint, it sort of swells up and starts throbbing and it's painful. And it happens throughout my body. So maintaining a calm and peaceful environment in my inner world is just as important as maintaining that in my outer world. And for anyone that experiences panic disorder, it's not about controlling, because that actually brings its own panic and distress itself, but it's about maintaining that internal peace and calmness and finding ways in which we can each do that individually. And it's an ongoing process. It's not just we've talked about, for example, the five ways of looking at the senses. What can you see? What can you hear? What can you smell? It's actually doing that on an ongoing basis, not just when you're um, experiencing panic,
Yeah.
but incorporating daily practices in your life where you can actually take a few deep breaths and be calm, use mindful activities, use meditation, listen to calming music. It's about finding ways that keep you and your body, mind, and soul in a calm space on an ongoing basis, not just in reaction to a specific event.
Right. And it's important to note also that when you are listening to music that calms you, that music might be completely different from what somebody else listens to. Um, Just as a
Mm,
random weird example, I love classical and opera, where I
mm-hmm,
know that can cause a lot of panic issues with some other people. You know,
mm,
they are really not a fan. And if they hear opera, it's just cringy for them. So they might turn to something like country music, which can do the exact same for me and cause panic disorders with me because I grew up
mm.
listening to country music. So it all kind of depends on each different person's individual preferences. What keeps us calm
Absolutely.
is different. And you can't have just a blanket statement of you have to do this, you have to try that. Because it's but not necessarily. Um,
No.
the five senses technique is very helpful for most people, but not always for everyone.
Mm, indeed. I mean, I've got a really quite a funny example is I bought myself a prayer bowl. So it's, made out of brass. And when you tap it, there's a sort of a sound that emanates that vibrates. It's quite beautiful.
Oh,
And I do have it here. I could even have a go if you want to listen to it.
yes.
Yeah.
Let's give it a shot. I'd love to hear that. That's pretty cool.
Now, trigger warning because the story I'm about to tell um, can actually, you know, have actually impact. So, there's a beautiful bowl and a wooden stick. And when I use it, I just do this. Oh, no.
It's coming in really faint. I'm not getting it. I think it's cutting
Oh,
that
really?
out.
What a shame. Because it's very loud on my end. I'll try it again.
I heard a light thump. I think the microphone is doing such a great job that it's cutting out all background noise, including
Oh,
that.
shame.
That
What a
is
shame.
interesting.
It's so beautiful. Anyway, for me, it's beautiful. So when I was, in a very stressful situation some years ago, I used to just hide down in my bedroom and tap on my prayer bowl, and I could just feel it vibrating through my whole body. And it was really a great way for me personally to calm down. Well, my teenage daughter at the time, for her, it did not gel at all. And she would scream out from upstairs in her bedroom, turn that thing off, I've told you before. So for her, it actually was a sensory overload and it used to cause her a lot of distress. I would get very frustrated thinking, I'm trying to do my thing here so that I can calm down. But I was actually causing her stress. So um, going back to the point that you just made is, and the reason why I brought it up is that each of us actually have different ways of finding that calm place.
Mm.
And it can be as extreme as that example that I've just shown you, because what works for one is not going to work for the other. And it's so important, particularly if you do experience a panic disorder, to find what works for you, because otherwise you're going to be in this constant state of hypervigilance, which is not a healthy way to be.
Absolutely. And it's not all that helpful. If you find something that works for you, it's not all that helpful for you to try to push that onto somebody else. And that's really important for other survivors or supporters to recognize. You can't
Mm,
tell somebody to just get over it. You can't tell somebody you're not trying hard enough because you haven't tried XYZ yet. Um, you have no idea what's going to trigger a panic attack in somebody else. You have no idea what they've been through, what their triggers are.
mm,
You can sit with them and try to help them through it, but don't try to force your what works for you onto somebody else. That's like for me, one of the greatest things in the world is to laugh, and I love watching comedies. It helps to calm me down when I'm in that panic mindset.
yeah.
But that doesn't work for everybody.
Um,
For some people, watching TV and watching a program like that that's going to have noise is it makes them feel even more in danger
mhm,
because they feel like the sound is masking what the danger might be that's coming to get them.
mm. That's so true. That's so true.
So,
Well,
and
we've
a, cou-
talked about, sorry, you're right.
a couple
Go
of the
ahead.
other physical problems that we didn't mention, by the way, is that it can also lead to heart disease, stroke, and diabetes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Um, it's interesting the link between those physical um, consequences and trauma, panic disorders. I mean, that whole holistic view of looking at our well-being is so important, and understanding that what happens to us physically, usually there's some sort of um, experience that has linked to that in the past. I remember my uni days many, many moons ago. We used to look at the whole sort of psychosomatic response, and the idea that our psychological experiences impacted on our physical body, and it was, some people around me at the time would go, oh yeah, it's just your brain, you need to sort that out, and very much minimized it. And it's so important to understand that link between what's going on in our brains in terms of our psychology and what's actually happening to our body. Because as we've said before, if we're in that fight, flight, survival mode, our whole body is being activated. And if that's activated constantly on overdrive, then yeah, I mean, there's going to be physical consequences, and they can be very, very, well, they can lead to death
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Last thing we want to do is die because of a panic attack. I mean, come on.
exactly.
That's a horrible way to go.
Yeah, yeah.
No actual danger, but your body gives out. Yeah.
Those signals. Yeah.
So how
So
do we
why
fight?
don't we talk about, yeah, how about we talk a little bit about some of the treatment, Amanda, for panic disorders? I've got a couple of things that I managed to research. Would you like me to have a chat about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's often, with treatment for panic disorders and anxiety disorders, psychotherapy is a really good way of dealing with the treatment side of things. Also, medications, prescribed by a professional, or a combination of the two. And with the psychotherapy, there's a couple of different ways that treatment is done. I think we've talked before a little bit about CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, before. Can
Right.
you remember? Have we discussed that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really very much around learning new ways of thinking and reacting to situations that provoke some sort of anxiety within us. So it's
Hey,
about identifying. Sorry.
can I be really honest with you real quick? First time
Mm.
I ever heard of CBT, I thought they were saying CBD, and it's like, I don't want any marijuana. Thank you. Sorry, you may continue now.
Well, they do seem very similar, don't they? Yeah. Um, but like on another level, CBD oil has been medically proven to help with panic disorders,
Yep.
and you can buy CBD oil that doesn't actually have the THC in it, so you don't have to necessarily be, um, you know, addicted to sort of that high of the drug.
Right.
So it's important to understand that there are alternatives to just the pharmaceutical model.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love that.
Um, so yeah, so it's about CBT, not CBD, is about changing our negative or unhelpful patterns of thinking and replacing them with more realistic and helpful ways of thinking. So it's really about our mindset.
Yeah.
It's also a process called exposure therapy. and that involves progressively exposing people with panic disorder to an object or situation that triggers their fear response. And at the same time, teaching and practicing new relaxation strategies. So it's simply, as it says, exposure therapy. And so grading slowly over time, exposure to whatever it is that is causing the angst. And then there's another way called panic-focused psychodynamic psychotherapy. I hadn't heard of this one before, PFPP. And what that does is aims to uncover underlying conflicts and experiences that have influenced the person's development of panic and anxiety. So really going right back to the trauma in someone's life.
Yeah.
So which is, it is, for some people will work. For some people, it's really important to address that traumatic issue,
right,
and deal with that, and that helps them then to subside in terms of their responses, their anxiety responses. But for other people, you just using the cognitive-based therapy and changing the way that they think about the world is a really effective way to go. So, yeah, I just thought it would be interesting for people to know a little bit about the ways in which panic disorders are treated. There is hope. You're not stuck with it.
Yep. Up until I was able to get therapy myself, I was trying to deal with all this stuff myself. And there are a couple of ways that you can help to kind of keep yourself in check if you're not able to afford therapy yet and you're having to wait to get there. I would suggest that you still eventually get there as soon as you're capable. But if you're looking to try and help yourself to control this in the meantime and just deal with it and cope with it, learn more about panic disorders, because the more you know about them, the better you're going to be equipped to manage your symptoms. There's a bunch of different books and different websites and stuff out there with lots of information. Identify your triggers. That's huge. Once you know what triggers your panic attacks, you can start to kind of develop strategies for either avoiding them or coping with them. You don't want to do this long term. And practice relaxation techniques and make sure you have a good network of people.
Yeah. I've also got, just to add to that, 3 more things. Keep moving. Exercise is so important. I know I've said this before, but it's really critical. Watching your diet, cut down on alcohol and caffeine, salt, sugar, those sorts of things are really important. Keeping a journal is also another way of just letting your feelings out. And going back to the relaxation, deep breathing, mindfulness, progressive muscle relaxation, visualization, yoga. Those are all important ways in which you can help calm yourself and your system and, recover, because that's what this is all about. It's growing from the darkness of whatever it is that we're experiencing, whether it be panic disorder or some other psychological experience.
Yeah, we've got this. We've got it. We'll get there.
We will. So what's up next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about something that's very closely related to this week's subject. We're going to be talking about anxiety attacks. And a lot of people think that panic disorders and anxiety attacks are the same thing, but they're not. And we're going to be exploring a lot more about that on the next episode.
I look forward to talking with you then. Thanks so much, Amanda, and thank you everybody for listening today. And I look forward to hearing from some of you in our Facebook page. Let us know what your experiences are.